Okay, this model is showing you a mid-sagittal section of the head and neck, and we can see a good part of the respiratory system here. This is called the nostril or the nasal inlet. This here is called the vestibule, this part, and this is called the ventricle, which is a dilation. And then you have 1, 2, 3. 3 elevations and 1, 2, 3, 3 depressions. So if you look at it, you see this is the superior, this is the middle, and this is the inferior concha or concha. And concha or concha means shell-like or an elevation. Superior concha, middle concha, inferior concha. And this is a depression in between that's called the meatus. Superior meatus, middle meatus, inferior meatus. And as you notice here, the superior and middle concha or concha, they are continuous with each other, while the inferior one is separated. This will be the inlet here, and then right after the nasal outlet, you will start, right after the nose, you will start the pharynx. And the pharynx is start from here, going all the way until above the trachea. This part here, this is called the nasopharynx, because this is the pharynx that's behind the nose. This part here is called the oropharynx, because this is the pharynx that's behind the oral cavity, which is the mouth, behind the mouth. The third part of the pharynx is behind the larynx, so it's called the laryngopharynx or the laryngopharynx. So this part here is called the nasopharynx, behind the nose. This part here is called the oropharynx, behind the mouth. And this part here is called the laryngopharynx, which is behind the larynx. And this is the larynx down here. This is the partition that separates the nose from the mouth, and this is called the palate. This is the hard palate, it's bone. This is a soft palate, soft tissue containing some muscles. And this is called the uvula. And the uvula is, if you open your mouth in front of the mirror, you will see something hanging in the back like this. And this open and close depending on if you're eating or breathing. If you're breathing, this will be hanging like this. If you're eating, it will be pushed up to prevent the food from going up to the nose. It will only force to go down. Since we're here, let's take a look at these muscles here. This is the number 34, I think. This is the mylohyoid muscle, because it comes from the mylohyoid tubercle here and go to the hyoid bone. This is a hyoid bone. The second one is geniohyoid, because it comes from the genial tubercle, which is this tubercle here in the mandible, and goes to the hyoid bone. And these are the intrinsic muscles of the tongue. This is the whole tongue. Now you have 3 types of tonsils, and each one will depend on the location. And the tonsils, if you compare this and this and this, you will see all of them looks the same. They have the lobules, the lobular structure. This one here, tonsil, that's located in the nasopharynx. This is a nasopharynx, so we call it the nasopharyngeal tonsil, also known as pharyngeal tonsil, also known as adenoids. This is like a nickname. They like to call it the adenoids. This one here. This one here is under the palate, so they call it the palatine or the palatine tonsil. This tonsil here, the third one, is behind the tongue, so they call it the lingual tonsil. So the lingual means tongue. So the tonsil that's behind the tongue. So the tonsil that's in the nasopharynx, nasopharyngeal tonsil or pharyngeal tonsil or adenoids. The tonsil that's under the palate, palatine or palatine tonsil. The tonsil that's behind the tongue is called the lingual tonsil. Now if you go down here, this is the epiglottis, and I can actually open it and close it like this to control the direction. If you're eating, this is your mouth, the food will go like this, and it can actually enter to your respiratory system. So if you're eating, this will close, and the food will be forced to go in this direction. So it will go to the pharynx, and this is the esophagus, starting from this point here. Behind the trachea, this is the esophagus, and it will go to the stomach and the digestive system. If you're breathing, this will be opened, and the air will go from the nose and go through your epiglottis that can open and close, and then go to the larynx and then the trachea. Now if you look at the sinuses, the sinus means a cavity that's within the bone. this cavity here, and this is to make the bone lighter and also to resonate the sound. So this bone here, if you look at it from the front, this is the frontal bone. So the sinus in the frontal bone is the frontal sinus. This bone here is the sphenoid bone. So the sinus or the cavity, the sinus in the sphenoid bone is called sphenoid sinus. This bone here is the ethmoid bone. These are called the air cells, the ethmoidal air cells. And this is a cribriform plate of ethmoid, if you still remember. See how this is fenestrated. Cribriform means porous or contain pores. And this is to allow the fibers, the nasal fibers, to pass from the nose, get into this cavity, which is the cranial cavity, going toward the brain. One more thing here, this point that I'm pointing to right now, this is the opening of the eustachian tube, which is called the auditory tube too, or pharyngotympanic tube. It's called pharyngotympanic because it goes to the tympanic cavity and starts from the pharynx. Which point? This point. So this is the opening of the pharyngotympanic tube, also known as eustachian tube, also known as auditory tube.